Leonhard stands over a battlefield, a cold warrior capable of immense and sudden violence. On his throne, the blonde ruler is known as the Beautiful Tyrant. Crown Prince Leonhard Valkyria is the ruling figure of the vast and powerful Valkyria Empire. Leonhard maintains a closed heart, having driven away every potential candidate for his royal bride. At the altar, the blonde prince finally takes a white-haired bride in a formal ceremony. Noble women in the audience whisper to one another, wondering if this woman is truly his bride. The bride gazes forward with an intense and intimidating expression during the sacred wedding ceremony. Fear ripples through the audience as the ladies tremble before the new crown princess's gaze. The priest stands before the couple and instructs them to seal their marriage with a kiss. They join hands at the altar, a golden ring signifying their official and permanent commitment. The white-haired woman maintains a stern and unreadable expression as she faces her new groom. She is Alina Aurelia, the daughter of the Margrave from the distant and snowy borderlands. Leonhard smiles warmly at his bride, remarking that she has not changed at all since they last met. Leonhard whispers closely into Elena's ear, asking her how it feels to finally become the crown princess. Elena looks away from the prince, suggesting it would have been better to choose another lady. Leonhard flatly rejects her suggestion with a smirk, appearing very pleased with his chosen bride. He reaches out to gently tilt her chin upward as they prepare for the traditional kiss. Leonhard leans in toward Elena's face while she remains rigid and still during the intimate moment. The prince and Elena share a kiss amidst a romantic frame of blooming pink roses. Leonhard watches her closely, his red eye remaining partially open as he pulls her closer. A bead of sweat rolls down Elena's neck as she remains tense and overwhelmed during the kiss. Elena reflects on her internal struggle, admitting she is actually hopelessly bad at talking to people. Despite her terrifying exterior, Elena's inner self is in a state of extreme distress and mental panic. Petals fall from her bouquet as the marriage is finalized before the eyes of the Empire. The story shifts back to 3 weeks earlier at the moonlit imperial castle. In the grand ballroom, Leonhard sits bored on his throne while the nobility dance and socialize. Leonhard dismisses a lady with a cold command and she leaves his presence in tears. His aide watches from behind, questioning if the prince even intends to choose a crown princess. Despite the prince's lack of interest, the aide notes the emperor has ordered him to marry. When his aide tries to introduce a count's daughter, Leonhard interrupts and commands him to be silent. Leonhard looks upon the candidate with disgust, declaring that the young lady displeases him. Frustrated, the aide internally rages at the prince, calling him a sadist for... A sequence shows various noblewomen fleeing the prince's presence in fits of tears and absolute terror. The aide insists that the prince should at least apologize for his blunt and cruel behavior. A wineglass shatters on the floor as the atmosphere in the ballroom shifts. Elena appears in the ballroom, surrounded by a dark aura that causes the other guests to cower. The prince asks if any other candidates remain, while Elena stands isolated on the red. Elena is infamous as the Empire's second most cold-blooded person, surpassed only by the prince himself. Noble women whisper that Elena intentionally sabotaged her rivals to remove them from the bride competition. Elena's sharp gaze causes the surrounding ladies to recoil, accusing her of being incredibly rude. As Elena walks away, she questions why the ladies are reacting with such fear and hostility. The crowd continues to whisper about her, claiming she is far too terrifying to be a bride. Leonhard decides he has had enough of the social event and begins to leave the ballroom. Elena bows her head in private, finding the social situation and the prince's behavior completely unbelievable. At the night fountain, Elena laments her miserable experience and her inability to fit in. A sudden wah sounds as Elena breaks down in tears, calling herself an absolute idiot. Elena recalls spotting a lady drop a handkerchief earlier and her desire to be helpful. She struggled to return the item, but her social anxiety made her hover until she looked threatening. Her shaking hands caused her to accidentally spill wine, which looked like a deliberate, cold-blooded attack. In her mind, she berates herself for not being able to simply apologize for the accident. Elena internally panics, realizing that her words only make her social blunders feel significantly worse. Elena remembers her wide-eyed, frantic attempt to ask guests if they needed anything at the ball. Desperately seeking forgiveness, the young white-haired girl recalls her past struggles with her own perceived rudeness. Elena reflects on her lifelong inability to communicate effectively with others, feeling overwhelmed by her anxiety. Despite her parents' best efforts to help her, Elena found that nothing could fix her social struggles. Standing alone at a ball, Elena's tense expression was constantly misinterpreted by other guests as hostility. By the garden fountain, Elena laments that she eventually became known as the Empire's worst villainess. Elena worries that her terrifying expression will lead the cold-blooded crown prince to execute her immediately. A sudden splash sounds as Elena peers into the water, desperately trying to force a friendly smile. Elena screams in frustration, demanding that her useless facial muscles cooperate so she can look pleasant. A sharp gasp escapes as Elena's pale green eye widens, sensing a sudden presence behind her. Leonhard appears in the moonlit garden, his tall, regal figure towering over the startled white-haired Elena. Surrounded by pink roses, Elena is momentarily stunned by the blonde prince's incredibly handsome appearance. Elena stammers in shock, realizing the man standing before her is none other than the crown prince. Leonhardt responds with a short, intrigued sound, his gaze fixed on the girl cowering before him. Leonhardt questions why Elena maintains such a bold attitude even though she clearly knows his royal identity. Elena stares in terror, certain that her social failure has finally doomed her to a swift execution. A soft rustle sounds as Leonhardt reaches out while Elena internally despairs over her own perceived rudeness. Leonhardt firmly grips Elena's chin, forcing her to meet his gaze as they stand by the fountain. Elena is frozen in shock, her eyes wide as the blonde prince holds her face with intensity. With a smirk, Leonhardt admits that he finds Elena intriguing enough that he will never get bored. Leonhardt makes a shocking declaration, telling the stunned Elena that she will become his royal bride. Elena stares back with an expression of pure disbelief, unable to process the prince's sudden proposal. A thumping heart sounds in the silence as Elena's mind reels from the prince's impossible demand. Under the bright moon, Leonhardt begins to lead the dazed Elena away from the palace fountain. Elena lets out a frantic internal cry of confusion, completely overwhelmed by the prince's sudden actions. A sudden bang echoes as the blonde prince returns to the ballroom with a shocked Elena. The prince's aide runs forward, calling out to his highness in a state of visible confusion. Leonhardt commands the attention of the room, coolly announcing that the evening's party is officially over. Stunned noblemen question the prince's abrupt departure, wondering if he has truly selected his future bride. Leonhardt wears a sharp, satisfied smile, clearly pleased with the chaos his sudden decision has caused. Leonhardt leans close to the blushing Elena, asking if she is ready for what comes next. Elena's heart races in panic as she wonders how the prince could possibly know her name. Leonhardt lifts Elena into his arms, demanding that everyone listen as a new royal era begins. Leonhardt displays a predatory, triumphant grin as he prepares to present his chosen bride to the guests. The ballroom erupts in a chorus of shocked screams as Leonhardt stands regally with the Villainess. Elena and the aide are both left wide-mouthed and speechless, processing the absolute absurdity of the situation. Leonhardt dismisses the audience, stating he will spend the rest of the night exclusively with Elena. Despite the protests of the surrounding noblemen, Leonhardt dismisses their concerns as being entirely pointless. Surrounded by pink blossoms, Leonhardt leans down and places a firm kiss on Elena's flushed cheek. Leonhardt looks down at the trembling Elena and simply states that they are leaving the party together. Elena's mind breaks as she screams internally, unable to accept her new reality as the crown princess. Elena desperately begs for the entire situation to be a dream as Leonhardt holds her close. Commoners gossip in the streets, shocked by the news that the tyrant and the Villainess are marrying. The citizens shudder at the thought of the empire's two scariest individuals standing side by side. Back at their estate, Elena's father rejoices over her engagement while her brother shouts in protest. Elena's green-haired brother looks on in concern while her father remains blissfully unaware of her distress. Elena sits in a daze, admitting to herself that she would reject this marriage if possible. Elena frantically asks Leonhardt if his proposal was a joke, but he responds with cold confusion. Leonhardt grips Elena's waist firmly and stares into her eyes, confirming that his proposal is completely serious. Leonhardt looms over Elena, asking if she intends to refuse his royal marriage proposal. Elena remains silent, fearing that defying the prince will result in a horrific fate. Her mind races with terror as she imagines the prince having her entire family killed. Elena slumps onto a couch alone, realizing there is absolutely no way to say no. She grips the fabric of her skirt tightly, knowing she has only one remaining path. With literal fire in her eyes, Elena declares that she has finally made her mind up. Maids surround Elena, preparing her for the duties expected of the empire's future crown princess. Elena is suddenly struck by a moment of intense shock and confusion during her preparations. She observes the staff, noting that the role of crown princess is remarkably busy and demanding. The head maid acknowledges her instructions, while the other servants appear visibly nervous and intimidated. Elena resolves to complete every task on her list with absolute determination and focus. Despite her helpful intentions, Elena's presence causes a noble couple to tremble in sheer terror. She attempts to interact with others, but her terrifying aura makes everyone around her cower. Elena sits at a meeting table while the men across from her sweat in fear. The crown prince and Elena share a quiet dinner where the atmosphere remains incredibly stiff. Elena feels her spirit breaking, lamenting that the entire day has been a total disaster. After a mental breakdown, Elena force-feeds herself to maintain the energy to finish the afternoon. Leonhardt sits back in his chair, watching his silent and intense bride with a cold gaze. Elena lets out a heavy sigh, exhausted by the constant pressure of her new royal life. She panics internally, realizing her blunt way of speaking made her sound incredibly rude once again. A heavy, somber atmosphere settles over the dining table as the prince continues to observe her. Elena reflects on her inability to be kind, noting she even acted cold toward the prince. She spots several maids whispering in the courtyard and wonders what has caused their distress. The maids panic over a stained dress, terrified of the crown princess's potential reaction to the mistake. Elena wants to reassure them, but her social anxiety pushes her to her absolute mental limit. An intense and sharp gaze reflects her inner turmoil as she prepares to speak to them. The maids believe that the princess will have them beheaded if they stay in her presence. Elena realizes with horror that she has been unintentionally scaring everyone around her this whole time. A soft tap sounds as Elena approaches the maids, who jump back in visible fright. The servants tremble as the white-haired princess looms over them with an accidental piercing stare. Elena tries to tell them everything is fine, but her tense face makes the words sound threatening. The maids scream for mercy and beg for their lives before fleeing from her in terror. Elena stands alone in the stone hallway, completely stunned by the reaction her presence caused. Seated on a garden bench, Elena laments that none of her efforts to be kind work. She sighs deeply, recalling how many times she practiced smiling and talking to others in private. Elena reminds herself that she cannot give up and must keep trying her very best. Despite her resolve, Elena looks deeply saddened and lonely while sitting among the garden flowers. She reflects on how the staff would rather die than endure another one of her glares. Elena clenches her jaw, struggling to control the muscles of her face to appear more approachable. She leans back and closes her eyes, trying to find a moment of peace in the sunlight. A close-up reveals her bright green eye as she senses someone approaching her from behind. Leonhard appears, teasingly remarking that she has a truly pathetic look on her face right now. He leans over the bench into her personal space, catching the princess completely off guard. Elena's mind spirals into a panic as she desperately tries to say something polite and normal. She barks out a greeting about the fine weather with a face of pure, unintended aggression. Leonhard lets out a short, surprised sound of amusement at her bizarre and intense behavior. Elena freezes in shock, her wide eyes searching for the source of the prince's sudden laughter. They sit together in the evening light while Elena questions if the prince actually just laughed. Elena turns toward the blonde prince, nervously asking if she can pose a serious question. With a look of vulnerability, Elena asks Leonhard why he chose her to be his princess. Leonhard gazes thoughtfully into the distance with a serious and focused expression. Leonhard smiles warmly while clasping his hands together, appearing satisfied with the situation. Elena reacts with absolute shock and a deep blush, questioning if he is joking. Leonhard displays a wide, triumphant grin as he enjoys his bride's flustered reaction. A sudden heartbeat sound thumps as Elena stares up at him in wide-eyed confusion. Leonhard pulls Elena close and gently tilts her chin up amidst blooming garden roses. The crown prince maintains a smug smirk as he observes Elena's mounting internal panic. Elena blushes intensely, her mind reeling as she questions why he finds her so fascinating. Leonhard leans in to whisper that she is terrible at social interactions, leaving Elena stunned. Leonhard explains that his royal position leaves him constantly surrounded by numerous political enemies. He admits that he never intended to marry if it only added more danger. Leonhard gazes deeply into Elena's eyes, creating an intense and intimate moment between them. A tight gripping sound is made as she clutches her skirt, struggling with her emotions. Elena looks up with a soft, vulnerable expression, seemingly moved by the prince's words. A light tap sounds as Leonhard flicks her forehead, telling her everyone will eventually understand. A soft sliding sound echoes as the prince turns to leave, telling her not to quit. Standing among the flowers, Leonhard turns back and asks if she is his wife. Elena stares after him with an awestruck expression, her green eyes shimmering with new resolve. Elena clenches her hands to her chest, declaring her determination to meet his high expectations. Leonhard walks away into the sunset, telling the crown princess that he is counting on her. Elena reflects on the prince's reputation, realizing he might not be a tyrant after all. The prince's aide rushes into the garden, shouting for his highness in a state of panic. Letting out a tired gasp, the aide announces that he has a message from the emperor. The aide warns that marrying a villainess is unheard of and could cost him the throne. Elena nervously asks the prince if he actually secured his parents' permission for their sudden marriage. The scene shifts to a tense moment where the group considers the emperor's potential reaction. Leonhard nonchalantly rests his chin on his hand and flatly denies having asked for permission. Elena's face drains of color as she stands frozen in a state of total disbelief. Elena shrieks in horror while Leonhard casually explains that reporting the marriage afterward should be fine. Leonhard places a firm hand on Elena's shoulder, calling her by name to get her attention. He pulls her into a sudden embrace, causing Elena to cry out in surprise and confusion. Leonhard leans in close and repeats that he is counting on her, specifically using her name. A cold sound accompanies her dread as Elena desperately wishes she could take her words back. She stares in horror, concluding that the prince is actually a complete and total tyrant. A chronicle describes a prestigious household that values only concrete results and exceptional personal ability. The imperial family gathers for a formal dinner where the atmosphere is incredibly heavy and stiff. A loud bang echoes as someone slams their hand onto the table in a fit of rage. Lydia Averil, Leonhard's elder sister and a neighboring queen, stands up to vent her extreme anger. Lydia glares with intense hatred, declaring that the prince shouldn't have married someone like Elena. Elena trembles and squeaks in terror. A subtle glance shows Elena sweating profusely as she tries to eat under Lydia's watchful eyes. Elena reflects on Lydia's status as a powerful queen while the woman continues to glare coldly. Leonhardt remains completely unbothered, calmly sipping his wine despite his sister's loud and angry protests. Lydia focuses her sharp gaze on the prince, clearly offended by his dismissive and calm attitude. She points an accusing finger at Leonhardt, warning that his selfishness could ruin the entire nation. The emperor and empress sit together looking concerned and weary from the ongoing family conflict. Internal reflections acknowledge that the public's negative reaction to the marriage could damage the crown's reputation. The empress suggests a solution, stating they must find a way to display Elena's charms quickly. A decorative border frames the suggestion that Elena must take full charge of a major event. Leonard smirks while holding Elena, announcing that she will host her own royal debut party. Elena is overcome with a sudden intense shock that leaves her face completely pale and frozen. Narrative text explains the grand debut party where nobles celebrate the birth of the new crown princess. Elena trembles as she realizes she must host the event usually managed by the empire's empress. Leonhardt confidently holds Elena's hand amidst blooming red roses while she looks up at him. Lydia argues with Leonhardt, warning that pointing a finger, Lydia shouts that she intends to see what the princess is truly capable of. A single thought bubble appears in the darkness, pleading for the current situation to briefly pause. Elena's eyes widen in absolute panic as she internally shouts that she hasn't agreed to anything. A spiked thought bubble emphasizes that the princess has not yet consented to the party planning. Gripping her head at a desk, Elena wonders how she could possibly manage complex royal party planning. Elena imagines Leonhardt as a devil, lamenting the cruelty of her husband's demands given her anxiety. Elena laments her lack of allies and wonders about the massive number of guests at the party. Sitting at her desk, Elena bites her quill pen while struggling to write her social plans. A painful memory of a past social failure. Elena wishes she were a normal person to avoid constant misunderstandings and the pain of overthinking. Elena considers asking the maids for help, but realizes their current fear makes proper communication impossible. A soft sound accompanies someone approaching, and valet announces their arrival at the princess's door. The elderly head maid and an assistant enter the room, bringing a tray of morning tea. Elena observes the head maid, hoping that befriending her will eventually ease the other servants' fears. A sudden realization strikes Elena, prompting her to form a new plan to win over the staff. Elena resolves to earn the head maid's trust, believing it is the key to communicating better. With a terrifyingly determined expression, Elena decides to prove her worth through direct action rather than words. Morning light fills the palace garden as the scene shifts to the start of a new day. The gray-haired head maid enters the workspace, offering a polite morning greeting to the gathered staff. A startled gasp, "Wah!" escapes the head maid as she sees the princess mopping alongside the servants. Elena offers a stiff, frightening greeting while clutching a broom, sending the staff into a panicked stutter. Elena envisions a successful operation where she becomes friends with the maids to ensure a perfect party. Determined to get along, Elena helps with chores, vigorously sweeping floors and stirring large cooking pots. In her imagination, Elena sees herself and the maids laughing happily together in a perfect friendly atmosphere. With an intense, predatory grin, Elena plans to ask the maids for party assistance after befriending them. Proudly presenting a meal, Elena believes her cooking skills will help her overcome her intense social awkwardness. Sunlight gleams on a full laundry basket placed on the green palace grass under the clear sky. Elena successfully hangs a massive amount of laundry, leaving the overwhelmed maids crying behind her in shock. The head maid cautiously approaches the princess, tentatively asking if Her Highness is finished with the laundry. A close-up reveals the head maid's pained and worried expression as she looks at the princess. Clenching a white sheet, Elena looks back with a confused expression as she hears the maid's voice. The head maid bows deeply, apologizing for her negligence and begging the princess not to fire anyone. Elena's face contorts in terrifying panic as she realizes her actions have been completely and horribly misunderstood. Internally, Elena struggles to find the words to explain herself while her physical reaction remains stiffly scary. A close-up of Elena's green eyes reveals her growing anxiety as the social interaction spiraled out. A maid explains that the crown princess personally helped the staff hang up all the heavy laundry. In a memory, Elena works hard alongside the maid, struggling with a large basket of laundry. A maid looks on in thoughtful silence as she processes the princess's unexpected and diligent labor. Elena and the head maid stand together in the laundry yard as the sun shines brightly. Elena admits that while talking terrifies her, she must speak to ensure her feelings are understood. Elena recalls her parents encouraging her to stay calm and practice speaking slowly during her childhood. Standing in the garden, Elena bows her head in a sincere attempt to show her humility. Elena looks down with a blushing, trembling expression, determined to get along better with everyone. A sharp sound accompanies the head maid's visible shock as she watches the princess's vulnerable reaction. The head maid reflects on how Elena helped so much that her hands became rough and worn. Elena hangs white laundry, silently pondering the real reason she wants to befriend the staff. Stepping out from the laundry, Elena loudly requests the maid's help preparing for the party. A soft, quick squeeze follows as the head maid firmly clasps the princess's hands. The elderly head maid smiles with genuine warmth, her face radiating a newfound sense of joy. Staring in stunned silence, Elena is completely caught off guard by the woman's positive reaction. A joyous laugh rings out as Elena and the maid celebrate their newly formed bond. Leonhardt watches the scene from the balcony until his aide calls out His Highness's title. Leonhardt casually asks what the aide is staring at while leaning against the stone railing. The aide questions what the princess is doing, while Leonhardt explains she's simply helping. Gasping in shock, the aide can't believe the so-called Villainess would ever perform manual labor. Leonhardt wears a smug grin as the aide remains flustered by the princess's surprising behavior. The aide asks if leaving such an important task to Elena is truly a wise decision. Leonhardt smirks with absolute confidence, trusting that his chosen bride will succeed in her role. The aide continues to worry, his expression filled with doubt despite the prince's apparent calm. A loud shout echoes as the aide demands to know if this is more important work. Leonhardt turns with a shimmering, handsome look, his red eyes focused on his goal. The sun sets behind the towering spires of the Grand Palace as the celebration begins. Noble guests mingle in the brightly lit ballroom, unaware of the tension brewing behind scenes. Lydia watches from the crowd, begrudgingly admitting that the current atmosphere is not bad. Lydia notices a change in the maids, who seem surprisingly cheerful as they serve the guests. The queen remains silent, her sharp purple eyes carefully observing every detail of the royal event. Elena makes a stunning entrance in a golden gown, looking every bit like a true princess. Elena stands before Lydia in the center of the ballroom, appearing regal yet visibly tense. A close-up reveals Elena's exquisite shoes, adorned with massive red gems and intricate gold patterns. Looking at the queen, Elena recalls the stressful shopping trips and preparations leading to this moment. A dismissive click of the tongue follows as Lydia glares at the nervous princess standing before her. Lydia's elegant red gown shimmers under the chandeliers as she maintains her haughty, regal posture. Guests gossip about Elena's sour expression, interpreting her extreme nervousness as a sign of rudeness. Elena's internal voice screams in panic, fearing that her heart might actually explode from the pressure. She worries about performing for the crowd despite her confidence in her actual dancing abilities. Elena remembers practicing her dance moves with the maids while wearing her simple servant's apron. She tries to calm herself by imagining the judgmental noble guests as harmless, oversized vegetables. Floating music notes surround Leonhardt and Elena as they begin their formal dance together. A sharp gasp escapes Elena as she accidentally steps on the prince's foot mid-turn. A sudden, firm pull steadies Elena as Leonhardt catches her before she can stumble. Leaning in close, Leonhardt tells her to focus only on him and enjoy the party. Elena stares at him, her fear beginning to fade as she confirms her commitment to him. A shimmering green light fills Elena's eyes as she finds her resolve in his steady gaze. She concludes that she can face anything as long as she remains by the prince's side. Leonhardt dips Elena gracefully as they finish their dance, captivating everyone in the grand ballroom. Elena's confidence surges, her mind filled with the singular thought that she can actually succeed. The pair finishes their performance amidst a sea of blooming flowers and admiring looks. A loud cheer erupts from the crowd while Lydia watches the successful performance with crossed arms. Lydia repeats her assessment, acknowledging that the princess's debut is not bad at all. A sudden shrill scream cuts through the music as Elena reacts to an unexpected disturbance. An angry voice shouts a mocking remark, dismissing Elena's title as the new crown princess. A drunk noble stumbles through the crowd, loudly insulting the prince for choosing a villainous bride. Lydia is shocked to see Viscount Cornelius, demanding to know why he was not removed. Guests whisper in confusion, questioning why the princess would invite such a man to the palace. A dark thought lingers in the air, suggesting that Elena might have caused this disaster intentionally. Elena stands before the crowd, panicking internally about how the blacklist failed her. A dark mental void surrounds her as she questions if the guest list was outdated. Elena takes full responsibility for the social blunder as her thoughts swirl in darkness. Elena's face pales with anxiety while she processes the disastrous mistake she just made. In the ballroom, Cornelius shouts for the crown prince to explain himself to a guest. Leonhardt watches the commotion calmly as a sharp, metallic clanging sound echoes through the hall. Lydia reaches out in alarm, a sudden cry of "oh no" escaping her lips. Elena's jeweled gold shoe steps forward decisively, creating a sharp clicking sound on the floor. A sudden, swift movement accompanies Elena as she strides past the startled prince and Lydia. Viscount Cornelius stammers in confusion as the princess approaches him with a trembling, scary aura. Elena mentally rallies her courage, telling herself she has the strength to do this. Cornelius flinches as Elena's heel clicks sharply, her terrifying presence looming over the noble. Cornelius demands the princess speak up and explain her bizarre and frightening approach. Elena remains focused on her goal, resolving to make the royal party a complete success. Elena stands tall, reminding the rude noble that he is addressing his royal highness. Elena's face contorts with fury as she declares that his rudeness has gone too far. With a terrifyingly dark expression, Elena shouts for the problematic noble to leave at once. A high-pitched scream sounds as Cornelius flees in tears, terrified by the princess's outburst. Elena cries internally over her heavy responsibilities while cute imaginary puppies surround her spirit. Elena stares blankly as the atmosphere shifts, her face pale from the intense social exertion. Clapping sounds fill the hall as Elena stands alone under the grand ballroom arches. Leonhardt smiles with quiet satisfaction while a guest claps enthusiastically in the background. Lydia approaches the princess, noting with surprise that the situation was actually handled well. Lydia looks at Elena with a complex, softened expression amidst the vibrant ballroom lights. Elena stammers a shy thank you, surprised by the pink-haired royal's unexpected praise. Lydia maintains her dignified posture, her previous coldness melting away in the rose-filled atmosphere. Elena realizes Lydia's harsh behavior was simply a strict way of protecting her younger brother. Elena reflects on Lydia being the textbook definition of someone overly devoted to her sibling. Elena concludes that Lydia is just a classic case of an overprotective sister. A firm sudden movement occurs as Lydia's gloved hand. Lydia insists they continue, asking if the princess has finished greeting all of the guests. Elena looks at the mingling crowd, feeling relieved that her earlier fears were mostly unfounded. The king and queen share a quiet toast, observing the party's success with calm satisfaction. Surrounded by blooming roses, Elena wonders if she can finally call this party a success. On the balcony, Elena watches the happy guests and feels glad everyone enjoyed the night. A sharp, startled gasp accompanies Elena nearly. Leonhardt approaches Elena on the moonlit balcony, gently asking if the princess is feeling tired. Elena drinks quickly with a comical gulp. Elena explains that the night's success is due to the maids in the prince's belief. Elena offers a rare, soft smile while framed by delicate roses and the night sky. Leonhardt watches her with an intense, admiring gaze as petals drift through the cool air. A sudden, gentle touch startles Elena as a hand is placed softly atop her head. Leonhardt smiles affectionately at her, his expression warm as he strokes her silver hair. Elena looks up with wide, shimmering eyes, frozen in shock by the prince's intimate gesture. Leonhardt chuckles, telling the princess that her unique way of greeting guests was truly priceless. Chibi Leonhardt laughs heartily while Elena clings to him, looking completely flustered and overwhelmed. Elena huffs and turns away, announcing she is returning to her room in an embarrassed flurry. A sudden heavy thud echoes as a dramatic confrontation begins to unfold in the hallway. Leonhardt corners Elena against a wall, his intense presence pinning the startled princess in place. Leonhardt tilts Elena's chin upward, whispering that he will take things further from here. Elena blushes intensely, her hand hovering near her lips in complete shock. Leonhardt promises to return with her as he leans in very close. Her green eyes swirl with confusion from the prince's sudden bold words. He offers a gentle dismissal of any concerns she might be having. A firm grip accompanies him pulling the startled princess toward his boy. Elena gasps softly while pink rose petals drift around her shocked face. Leonhardt lifts her chin, his gaze intense amidst the many blooming flowers. A single glass of red wine stands alone on the dark table. Elena wonders if this moment is finally what people would call romance. Sitting together, she looks pale while he casually drinks his red wine. She panics internally about the terrifying reality of their first wedding night. Her gold wedding ring catches the light, making the marriage feel real. She clumsily insists on drinking the wine herself to hide her nerves. Elena thinks that her theoretical book knowledge hasn't prepared her for this. Elena chugs the wine with a gulping sound to calm her spirit. Her hand shakes while placing the glass down, fearing a social mistake. Elena admits her feelings are struggling to keep up with her reality. Leonhardt watches her with a look of quiet, focused, and intense interest. He notes how red her face has become in the soft moonlight. A soft word escapes him as he prepares to speak to her. Elena wonders if a kiss is about to happen as she waits. Leonhardt looks down at her with a calm and very knowing expression. She anticipates a kiss as he moves his face closer to hers. A moment of shared intimacy unfolds between the couple on the bed. Elena's spirit literally leaves her body as she faints from the shock. Leonhardt's hands move to support her as she begins to collapse backward. He carries his unconscious bride through the palace with effortless royal grace. Elena lies down, her face pale after the overwhelming and romantic encounter. Leonhardt brushes a stray lock of hair from her forehead very affectionately. The scene shifts as grand wooden doors lead into the imperial meeting hall. The council gathers around a long table for official and serious business. Elena laments that she completely blew her chance at a real romance. She wakes up fearing the consequences of her disastrous first-night blunder. Narrative text notes that while the party succeeded, many challenges still remain. Elena recalls the drunken noble and regrets her near-social failure yesterday. She believes more research would have prevented her earlier mistakes entirely tonight. Elena hardens her resolve to focus on the important royal work at hand.
She tries to concentrate on the meeting despite her intense internal turmoil.
Leonhardt explains the need for quick aid for the Southern Territory's drought. A noble asks the princess to share her expertise with similar droughts. Elena panics internally, begging her voice to work during the formal presentation. She stares at the blank page, looking completely lost and very stressed. The nobles debate the difficult budget and declining output of the gems. Leonhardt intercedes to suggest using hot springs while Elena looks remarkably relieved. She realizes how little she actually knows about the empire's complex affairs. Elena grips her skirt tightly, feeling inadequate for her high royal position. Leonhardt looks at a document, questioning what the princess has actually written. Elena has collapsed into a literal puddle of gray and pathetic embarrassment. Lydia pours water from a watering can onto the puddle-like princess's head.
Leonhardt and Lydia look down at the blob, finding her behavior ridiculous.
Lydia proposes a final training option while Leonhardt agrees and the silver-haired princess questions their choice. With a sharp snap, the pink-haired royal flings her fan open and confirms the decision immediately. Lydia shouts with sudden intensity, leaving the startled princess screaming in a state of total shock.
Alina gulps nervously, asking what exactly bride training involves as she fears the upcoming social curriculum.
Lydia outlines a rigorous schedule, including needlework and official duties required of a future crown princess. Setting a new goal, Lydia announces an upcoming tea party where Alina must earn noble approval. The blonde prince smirks confidently, confirming his presence and support for Alina's next social challenge. Lydia introduces Madame Barry, a social powerhouse whose acknowledgement is vital for the princess's future status. Lydia recalls the tea party battlefield, remembering how she fell ill after her first daunting visit.
Lydia's eyes ignite with literal fire as she laughs about the extreme intensity of the training.
A loud bang echoes as Alina dives under a table, much to the royals' collective confusion. Peering out from her hiding spot, Alina admits that the upcoming party is making her heart race. Lydia pulls the trembling princess from under the furniture, demanding she stop behaving like a coward.
Leonhardt crouches down to Alina's level, offering a helping hand to his cowering and panicked bride.
A sudden gentle touch startles the princess as a finger is placed softly under her chin.
Leonhardt smiles mischievously, warning Alina that she will soon owe him a favor for his assistance.
Lydia explains that she also endured harsh bride training for the long-term sake of the empire.
Alina realizes that those difficult training days were what molded Lydia into her current perfect self.
Watching Lydia, Alina reflects on the immense effort and dedication required to reach such royal perfection. Narrative text emphasizes the hard work and tireless dedication required to achieve a high imperial status.
Lydia stands tall and dignified, her poise serving as a powerful inspiration to the watching princess.
Despite her initial fear, Alina resolves to overcome the intense challenges of training and tea parties.
Alina decides it is finally time to change, knowing she has come too far to retreat.
A singular, intense focus consumes her thoughts as she vows to become a proper crown princess. Standing with newfound determination, Alina's long silver hair flows behind her as she faces the royal. Alina turns back to face the pink-haired woman with a serious, focused, and unyielding expression. Rebounding from her panic, Alina loudly declares her readiness to face any training Lydia provides her. A close-up reveals a subtle, knowing smirk forming on Lydia's face in response to the outburst. Lydia looks down with a proud smile, satisfied by the silver-haired princess's sudden burst of courage.
Leonhardt watches the exchange, confidently promising to keep up with his bride's efforts no matter what.
Lydia presents a scroll of training courses, telling Alina she must now choose her specific path. Alina points to the most extreme option on the list, questioning what the Hell course entails. Lydia explains that the Hell course involves a relentless all-day boot camp under her personal supervision. Alina realizes that spending all day with the perfect Lydia sounds more like heaven than hell.
Lydia lets out a dark, villainous laugh as she anticipates the start of the rigorous training.
Alina strikes a confident pose, shouting her acceptance of whatever difficult course is thrown her way. Time moves forward quickly as the ornate palace clock strikes the beginning of a brand new day. After the exhausting night, Alina sleeps soundly in her grand bed beneath soft white linens. A sudden firm grip on the bedsheets creates a loud rustling sound, waking the sleeping princess. Alina's eye snaps open in surprise as she senses an unexpected and bold presence in her bedroom. Wearing gold-rimmed glasses, Leonhardt looms over his bride and greets her with a charming morning smile. Framed by blooming roses, the prince leans in close to the startled princess as the atmosphere shifts.
In a romantic blur of pink petals, Leonhardt pulls Alina close for an intimate morning encounter.
A thought bubble reveals that her official bride training has already begun in this very moment. Leonhardt pins Alina to the bed, smirking as he reminds her of her new royal duties. A brief transition occurs as the narrative prepares for the next chapter of Alina's imperial life. Alina rushes through the sunlit hallway in a yellow dress, looking flustered and heavily blushing. A quiet moment follows, framed by delicate roses as the princess processes the morning's shocking events. Back in the bedroom, Leonhardt leans over Alina again, his intense gaze fixed directly on her. Leonhardt tilts Alina's face upward, his hand firm on her cheek during their private training session. Leonhardt pins the startled princess to the bed, smirking as he reminds her of her new duties. Alina fumes with a bright red face, frustrated by the prince's bold and unexpected morning behavior. Entering the room with a determined look, Alina finds herself face-to-face with a formidable new presence. Madame Barry stands with her back turned, her elegant blue gown and posture radiating strict authority. Madame Barry peers over her fan with sharp, discerning eyes, immediately judging the princess's potential. Clutching her chest, Alina trembles with anxiety as she prepares to face the legendary teacher's scrutiny. Lydia says they should get started right away as the sharp click of a shoe sounds. Alina stares in wide-eyed silence, her mind racing at the sudden and intense start of her curriculum. A confident smirk plays on Lydia's lips as she enjoys the princess's obvious state of shock. Cultural tools capitalize on the first stage of training, focusing on developing the princess's refinement and etiquette. Towered over by stacks of books, Elena realizes the sheer scale of the education she must master. Lydia lists piano, embroidery, flower arranging, dance, and tea as subjects Elena must pass to a specific level, prompting the princess to ask if she will ever get to rest.
Lydia smiles ominously as the princess squeaks in fear, sensing the brutal nature of the upcoming lessons.
Lydia announces she is assigning a workload no normal person could ever finish and tells Elena to be prepared not to sleep for 3 days. Hours pass in the silent palace as the sun begins to shift across the blooming garden flowers.
Lydia gasps in absolute shock while examining the results of Elena's first attempts at artistic expression.
Leonhard and Lydia watch in stunned silence, noting that Elena's social anxiety grants her incredible concentration.
Lydia demands Elena listen to her piano performance next as the exhausted princess stands ready at the instrument.
Elena plays with such profound skill and intense focus that Lydia is left momentarily lost for words. A close-up reveals Lydia's mouth hanging open, her composure shattered by the princess's hidden musical talent. Exhilarated by the performance, Lydia shouts about the beautiful tone, astonished by the princess's skill. Lydia physically grabs the princess, declaring it unbelievable and shouting that they must move on to the next challenge immediately. Elena responds with a shaky confirmation as a massive mountain of historical texts is dumped before her. Lydia issues a seemingly impossible ultimatum, ordering Elena to memorize the empire's entire history in 3 days. A cold smile crosses Lydia's face as she describes the upcoming period as a relentless memory hell. Elena's desperate cry echoes from the castle towers, hoping the brutal training schedule is merely a joke. Lydia is baffled to find that Elena has perfectly memorized and recited everything in one night without a single mistake. A close-up shows the intricate handwriting of the historical documents Elena has mastered with such shocking speed. Elena reflects on how her talent for solitary focus, born from social anxiety, is finally proving useful. Leonhard watches his bride with a soft, admiring smile, deeply impressed by her unexpected and brilliant display. Lydia confirms the first step is cleared, noting that Elena's impressive performance has cleared step 1 of her training. The next phase of training is revealed, involving complex trade policy debates with the empire's senior nobles. Now dressed in red, Lydia explains that Elena will debate trade policy with the neighboring country alongside the nobles. Images of the princess overlap as she collapses, overwhelmed by the daunting task of facing the nobles. Elena lies face down on the table in defeat while Lydia lets out a sharp, mocking laugh. Lydia emphasizes that Elena will need these high-level social and political skills in every possible situation she faces. Leonhard notes that the timing is perfect as the nobles are present for a council meeting and suggests they go talk to them immediately. Elena tries to reassure herself that she has perfectly memorized the material and should be able to hold a conversation. Finding her courage, the silver-haired princess prepares to step out and prove her worth to the council. Peering from behind a heavy door, Elena takes a deep breath and resolves to get through the upcoming encounter. Elena frantically rehearses whether she should discuss lifting tariffs or avoiding tariffs on foodstuffs, concluding that both phrases sound wrong and weird. One noble asks if the other felt a chill, while the second agrees and mentions hearing rumors about ghosts in the castle. The nobles decide to leave before anything happens, while a nervous Elena watches them go. Shadows loom as the desperate princess reaches out, her pale face and pleading voice terrifying the unsuspecting men. The nobles look back in pure horror, seeing a ghostly, shadowy figure pursuing them through the dark hall. Elena offers a terrifyingly intense smile, asking if they could perhaps have a little chat while looking like a spirit. Screaming in absolute terror, the nobles collapse to the floor, convinced they are facing a vengeful spirit. A narrative notification confirms the ghost's arrival as a chibi Elena cries over the disastrous social encounter. Elena begs the nobles not to run away while the men scream for the evil spirit to be gone. A sudden, firm grip on a noble's leg causes him to cry out in pure terror. Elena attempts to discuss monster tariffs while looking like a terrifying ghost, causing a noble to scream. The noble is shocked to realize the frightening figure is actually Her Highness the Crown Princess. The nobles apologize and claim they are in a hurry as they try to flee the princess. Elena begs them not to go, while a noble cries out in fear of the crown princess. Elena panics internally, wondering how to start talking and questioning why His Highness put her here. The intense mental pressure of the social situation causes Elena to suffer a sudden explosive nosebleed. Someone calls out to Her Highness as Elena collapses face first onto the stone floor in defeat. Back in bed, Elena is flustered and clutches her nightgown while processing her latest public failure. Elena is shocked to find the prince sitting on her bed reading, wondering why he is there. A narrative bubble explains that Elena's attempt to talk to the nobles only made them feel uncomfortable. Elena reflects on how she wanted to apologize before her vision went white and she passed out. Leonhard notes her failure, and a flustered Elena shouts in response that it was more or less true. Elena cries about her failed confidence and knowledge, wishing she could crawl into a hole and disappear. Elena notices that Leonhard's clothes are different from this morning, while he asks her a brief question. Leonhard speaks calmly as a crying chibi Elena continues to lament the social disaster with the nobles. Elena despairs over failing her assignment and making trouble for everyone on top of her social failure.
Alina remains buried in her blankets while Leonhardt sits on the bed, watching her with a calm expression. A close-up of Leonhardt reveals a dark... Elena's eyes wide with alarm as she senses... Leonhardt firmly tilts Elena's chin upward, his hand steady as he looks directly at his startled bride. Framed by roses, Leonhardt announces that tomorrow Elena will be spending the entire day with him. Leonhardt repeats his directive while a panicking chibi Elena wonders about the weight of his words. As they walk through the castle, Elena nervously wonders where in the world the prince is taking her. Leonhardt stops at their destination, simply saying "here" as the princess reacts with a silent exclamation point. A chibi Elena looks on in shock as she realizes they have arrived at the knight's training grounds. Flustered and sweating, Elena asks what exactly they are doing at such a location as the prince smiles. Leonhardt looks back at her with a charming expression while Elena responds with a confused sound. A large narrative bubble appears containing the simple and ominous instruction for the prince to be introduced. Elena stands before a row of knights, her silver hair flowing as she struggles with her social anxiety. A narrative thought captures Elena's disbelief at the sudden and direct nature of the prince's demand. Looking at the prince's back, the knights observe that His Highness looks terrifying today as well. The prince's boots click on the stone as he calls out Elena's name to get her attention. Elena greets the knights with a terrifying, wide-eyed smile while stuttering that she is pleased to meet them. Elena's ghostly voice bubble repeats the greeting as the knights wonder if she is as nervous as them. The group stands in a heavy atmosphere as Leonhardt smirks and the others look visibly strained and sweating. Leonhardt announces it is time to start training and the knights respond with a loud, respectful affirmation. While knights spar, a tiny Elena sits on a bench lamenting her inability to greet them properly. Leonhardt demonstrates his prowess with the sword, moving with a grace that is emphasized by blooming roses. Watching him, Elena is momentarily lost in thought, admitting to herself that the prince looks amazing. Elena stands in the training courtyard, still wondering why His Highness brought her to such a place. A sweaty and focused Leonhardt holds his sword, his handsome features highlighted by the bright outdoor sun. Elena stares at the sword in her hands, responding with a shocked question when she realizes her role. A massive speech bubble filled with a loud scream of terror represents Elena's reaction to the training. Leonhardt and Elena clash swords, and he mocks her by asking what's wrong since she is shaking. Elena shouts for him to wait, questioning if sword training is actually part of a Leonhardt smiles sharply and informs her that for his wife, this type of training is indeed mandatory. A narrative bubble emphasizes Elena's disbelief, asking what kind of logic the prince is using. Elena is pushed back by the force of Leonhardt's blade, struggling to maintain her footing during the duel. The knights remark that the prince is being very rough on the princess by demanding she learn swordsmanship. A final narrative bubble leaves the scene on an ominous note, stating that this situation is something else. Leonhardt smiles warmly while a knight notes he is clearly enjoying the princess's reactions. Two practice swords clash together against the backdrop of a bright cloud-streaked sky. Elena falls backward onto the stone courtyard with a sudden heavy thump sounding out. Leonhardt looms over Elena, pointing his sword directly at her as she lies defeated. A panicked chibi Elena begs him to wait and hold on during the lesson. Frustrated and exhausted, Elena shouts that she has already had quite enough of this. Elena screams at the prince, calling him a sadistic brute as she sits grounded. A tight close-up captures Elena's face as she lets out a loud, venting scream. The knights are horrified, certain Elena will be killed for speaking so boldly to Leonhardt. Elena looks dazed as her sword clatters to the ground, signaling her total defeat. Framed by soft roses, Leonhardt smiles gently at his bride, his earlier intensity fading away. The knights observe the prince with confusion, wondering if he is actually laughing at her. Leonhardt reaches his open hand down toward the princess to help her up again. Helping her up, Leonhardt notes that she actually has a very strong voice on her. Elena is stunned into silence by the prince's touch and his unexpected gentle praise. The knights wonder how she tamed the prince as he offers her his hand. Elena denies having any influence, claiming he simply drags her around as he likes. A close-up focuses on Elena's wide, glittering green eyes as her heart begins racing. Elena reflects on her growth while images of her previous struggle fade into blooming roses. Elena joins the group, noting that Leonhardt is watching her with a very steady gaze. Elena reflects on her belief that knowledge alone would make social communication go perfectly well. She recalls the social disaster where her tension left the nobles completely at a loss. The knights laugh together in the training yard, appearing more comfortable around the princess. Leonhardt watches the interaction with a stoic, thoughtful expression while his arms remain crossed. Elena offers the knights a bright, genuine smile while thanking them for their hard work. Leonhardt watches her with a faint, knowing smirk that suggests his plan is working. The knights crowd around Elena, excitedly asking her about the prince's sudden change in demeanor. Two knights whisper together, wondering if the prince's recent behavior was actually a sign of jealousy. Leonhardt looms over the gossiping man, darkly asking if they're looking to die today. A knight dismisses the idea of jealousy while the prince stands by with a smile.
Leonhardt smirks as a nervous knight beside him begins to sweat under his intense presence. Elena stands in a conference room, nervously announcing she will begin handing out the materials. The nobles are delighted by the quality of the documents, noting how clear they are. A narrative notification confirms the task is clear as a chibi Elena celebrates her success. Elena sets a thick book down on the desk with a solid, determined thud sounding. Elena reflects on how well the conversation went as she sits alone in the office. A sudden sharp knock at the door startles Elena as she focuses on her work. Leonhardt enters with a letter, announcing that a reply has arrived from Madame Barry. Elena stands up in shock, demanding to know when he even sent her a letter. Leonhardt suddenly and firmly grips Elena's arm, causing her to react with a sharp flinch. Leonhardt pulls the princess onto his lap, startling her as he holds the new letter. A close-up shows Leonhardt gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind the princess's ear. Leonhardt's hand moves toward Elena's collar as he leans in very close to her. Leonhardt holds Elena in a back hug, his presence overwhelming her as they look at the letter. The prince leans over Elena's shoulder, causing the flustered princess to react with wide eyes. Elena's face turns bright red as she shouts about her complete inability to focus now. A chibi Elena struggles in the prince's embrace, thinking he enjoys her panicked reactions. Elena recalls a warning that she must clear her name if the villainous rumors persist. Elena resolves that she must clear her reputation at the upcoming tea party no matter what. Leonhardt leans in to whisper that he will tell her something very useful for her mission. Leonhardt mentions an orchard at the capital's edge that supplies apples to the imperial family. Leonhardt notes Madame Barry's admiration for the third empress, while Elena studies the royal's portrait. Elena stands with a determined fist, declaring her intention to visit the apple orchard immediately. A series of quick taps sounds out as Elena rushes away from Leonhardt's office desk. Leonhardt watches his bride depart with a knowing and satisfied smile playing on his lips. The gate to the imperial apple orchard stands closed under a bright and clear morning sky. A solitary narrative bubble declares that there are no apples available for the unexpected visitor. The orchard master, identified as Apple Ferdinand, stares forward with a stern and unyielding expression. Ferdinand turns to walk away while Elena desperately pleads for him to stop and listen. Standing alone in the orchard, Elena lets out a loud and frustrated scream of total despair. Elena stands dejectedly beneath the trees, lamenting her failure to stop the master from leaving. A narrative bubble reflects on the difficulty of conducting business when arriving completely unannounced. Elena resolves to convince the master to share at least a few apples for Madame's sake. Elena's green eyes widen with sudden realization as she spots something unusual among the apple trees. Elena gazes at a specific tree where several yellow apples have fallen onto the dark soil. A soft rustling sound emanates from the nearby foliage as Elena moves closer to investigate. Ferdinand returns to find the princess still present, and she stammers that she simply got lost. Elena points out that one particular tree appears much weaker than all the others around it. Ferdinand laments that this specific tree refuses to thrive despite receiving perfectly good sunlight. Elena realizes that solving this horticultural mystery could be the key to earning the master's trust. Ferdinand looks at the silver-haired princess with a skeptical and questioning gaze. Elena's face takes on a dark, intense look as she asks for permission to handle the tree. With a sinister smirk, Elena promises to fix the tree if he agrees to share golden apples. A celebratory chibi Elena cheers while Ferdinand reluctantly agrees to let her attempt the fix. Ferdinand maintains a doubtful expression, certain that fixing the dying tree is an impossible task. A narrative bubble captures Ferdinand's inner thought that the princess will surely give up soon enough. A montage shows Elena investigating the soil and being chased by bees during her repeated orchard visits. Working late into the night, Elena is surprised when the orchard master finds her still active. Kneeling in the dirt, Elena excitedly calls out to the master about her recent discovery. Elena claims she can solve the problem by tomorrow and was performing one final check. A worried chibi Elena asks for the master's permission to bring knights to help her work. Ferdinand looks surprised by the request, but informs her that he does not mind the help. A group of knights in red uniforms arrives at the orchard, ready to assist the princess. The knights begin digging and reinforcing the ground around the tree as Ferdinand watches the progress. A knight responds to Elena's instructions with a loud and respectful affirmation of his duty. Elena directs the work with focus while the orchard master observes her with his arms crossed. Leonhardt appears at the orchard, revealing that he was the one who dispatched the knights. Leonhardt stands beside Ferdinand with a smug expression, watching his wife work in the orchard. A chibi Leonhardt smirks while thinking about watching everyone's struggles from a close distance. Elena and the knights work together to lift and place heavy stones around the tree's base. Ferdinand watches the group's coordinated effort with a silent and increasingly impressed expression. A few hours later, Elena and the knights cheer together in celebration of their hard work. Ferdinand asks if soil was the issue, and Elena explains the ground had slightly sunk. The group stands around the repaired tree while Elena explains the problem was with the land. Ferdinand admits he should have noticed the subsidence and signs that he is getting old. Elena, covered in dirt, passionately explains her findings regarding the recent changes to the land. Pointing to a map, Elena explains how a nearby excavation caused the localized land subsidence. Ferdinand smiles warmly, crediting the success to the princess and the knights working together. Framed by roses, a dirty but triumphant Elena stands proudly after successfully saving the tree. The man lets out a soft, breathy chuckle while admitting he was far too short-sighted.
Ferdinand observes the dirt-stained princess with a newly found respect for her hard-earned success. A basket brimming with glowing golden apples is presented as the fruit of her labor. Elena gazes at the golden apples in her hands, naming the legendary fruit she finally obtained. Ferdinand hands Elena a pouch, noting the tea pairs best with this leaf blend Madame favored. Ferdinand wears a soft, content expression as he looks at the princess he once doubted. Still covered in dirt, Elena flashes a radiant, joyful smile at her hard-won victory. A fresh apple pie and a cup of tea sit ready for a tasting session. Leonhardt remarks on her boldness for making him taste test. Elena frantically denies having poisoned the pie. Leonhardt takes a deliberate bite of the apple pie while Elena watches him with bated breath. Elena clutches her chest, her face flushed with anxiety as she awaits the prince's final verdict. Leonhardt smiles serenely after eating while a chibi Elena cries tears of relief and joy. Elena worries whether Madame Berry will accept her despite the effort she put into the apples. Leonhardt leans close to Elena, informing her that he has cleared her entire schedule for tomorrow. Elena protests in a flustered panic as Leonhardt holds her close amidst a background of roses. Leonhardt gently cups Elena's face, tenderly telling her she has worked incredibly hard to reach this. Leonhardt looks at Elena with a soft, affectionate gaze as the scene transitions to the party. Madame Berry welcomes her guests to the tea party as they gather in the bright garden. Elena looks overwhelmed by the cold, judgmental glares coming from the three noblewomen behind her. Madame Berry formally addresses her, acknowledging her presence as the crown princess of the empire. Madame Berry notes she replied to the letter and calls Elena a woman of significant spine. Elena nervously interprets the remark as being called thick-skinned rather than a compliment on her bravery. Leonhardt watches the proceedings with a confident, slight smirk while remaining in the background. Elena resolves to earn the madame's approval and see her bride training through to the end. A single word signals an impending turn of events during the tense social gathering. Elena is visually overwhelmed by the intense, glowing stares of the noblewomen surrounding her.
The series title confirms the tale of the socially anxious villainess doted on by the tyrant.
Elena decides to offer the apple pie she brought to ease the tension at the table. Elena offers her gift, but a lady interrupts, claiming she heard about Elena's recent actions.
A flashback shows a distressed man accused of being invited to Elena's debut party despite being banned.
Elena is struck with sudden shock as the conversation shifts toward her past controversial social choices. The nobles ask if inviting the banned man was defiance. Elena struggles to form an explanation.
Lady Lydia speaks up with a stern expression, confronting Elena about her act of defiance.
Madame Berry sips her tea in silence, her neutral expression giving nothing away to the guests. Elena's hands tremble so violently that she cannot even manage to get a single word out. Fearing Lady Lydia will be blamed, Elena resolves to accept the blame and sincerely apologize. Elena takes full responsibility for the mistake, while the surrounding noblewomen react with various shocks.
Madame Berry watches the princess with a cold, piercing gaze as the situation grows more tense.
Elena tries to explain her nervousness during her very first formal tea party experience.
A close-up shows Elena's hand shaking uncontrollably as she tries to hold her delicate porcelain teacup.
The teacup slips from her grasp, sending the liquid flying as she lets out a gasp. A large tea stain spreads across Madame Berry's blue dress following the accidental and messy spill. Elena's eyes widen in absolute horror as she realizes the magnitude of her clumsy social blunder. A moment of shocked silence hangs over the table as the screen fades into dark patterns. Madame Berry ends the session stating she has absolutely nothing more to say to the princess. Elena looks devastated, her eyes brimming with tears as she feels everything has failed as usual. Elena questions the purpose of all her training if she still fails at simple social interactions. Scenes of her hard work and presentations in the orchard flash by, highlighting her previous efforts. Elena calls out to the departing Madame Berry, her voice filled with desperation and regret. Elena chases after the Duchess, unwilling to let the lesson end on such a disastrous note. Elena stares ahead with a look of pained realization, processing the fallout of the tea party. Elena presents a basket containing a beautifully baked apple pie, hoping it will prove her point. Madame Berry observes the gift as the white-haired princess insists on the honesty of her claim.
The room falls silent as the purple-haired Duchess stares intently at the golden fruit offering.
A single glistening slice of apple pie sits elegantly on a gold-rimmed porcelain plate. Madame Berry takes a cautious bite of the pie, her expression unreadable as she tastes it. Elena and Lady Lydia watch the Duchess with bated breath, their faces tight with nervous anticipation. Shimmering golden apples appear in the background as Madame Berry's eyes widen in genuine shock. Elena offers the tea she prepared, inviting everyone to enjoy the pairing with the dessert.
Fragrant tea is poured into a delicate cup scented with the essence of autumn leaves.
The attending noblewomen are completely captivated by the divine flavor of the pie and tea. A joyful vision of dancing fruit and tea fills the air as the guests cry with delight. Savoring the unique blend, Madame Berry admits she never expected to find such a perfect combination. The Duchess asks for the reasoning behind the pairing as Elena prepares to explain her choice. A historical figure is shown, illustrating the legendary importance of golden apples to the empire's peace. Elena explains her thoughtful strategy, emphasizing her desire to honor the traditions of the imperial family. Madame Berry expresses disbelief that the notoriously stubborn orchard master would ever share his precious fruit. Recalling her trials with bees and heavy labor, Elena reveals the apples were a hard-earned reward. Looking down at the princess, Madame Berry asks why she would go to such incredible lengths. Elena declares her firm resolve to become a consort who can truly support the imperial throne. The noblewomen listen in silence as Elena describes the intensity of her dedication to her training. Elena wonders if there is still hope for her to succeed despite her many social anxieties. Sunlight filters through the lush trees surrounding the garden gazebo where the tea party continues. Passion and determination burn in Elena's eyes as she stands amidst the blooming garden flowers. A look of newfound respect and softness crosses Madame Berry's face as she watches the princess. The purple-haired duchess sits calmly, her hands folded as she processes Elena's heartfelt confession. The remnants of the successful tea and pie sit on the table, signaling a social triumph. Standing with a graceful curtsy, Madame Berry pledges her full support to assist the crown princess. Elena's face flushes with a mixture of shock and overwhelming relief at the duchess's words. A radiant and joyful smile breaks across Elena's face, her previous worries finally melting away. Lady Lydia warmly informs Elena that she has officially and successfully graduated from her bride training. Elena and Lady Lydia celebrate with an enthusiastic high five as happy tears flow freely. Clap. Reflecting on her tearful beginning, Elena stands proudly with her mentors as the sun begins to set. Leonhardt leans against the royal carriage, commending Elena for her success amidst a bed of roses. The blonde prince expresses his sincere gratitude to Madame Berry for her mentorship of his wife. Madame Berry offers a villa stay as a honeymoon gift, wishing the couple a peaceful trip. Chibi versions of the couple discuss their upcoming schedule as the evening air turns cool. Leonhardt brushes a lock of hair from Elena's face as a gentle shh sounds between them. Leonhardt pulls a blushing Elena into his arms while the noblewomen watch from the background. Looking deeply into Elena's eyes, the prince remarks that the time for their departure has arrived. Surrounded by blooming roses, Leonhardt pulls Elena close, noting she finally made time for him. An imperial carriage travels swiftly down a forest road toward the couple's new destination, Rumble. Madame Berry watches the departing couple with a satisfied and knowing smile on her face. Seated inside the carriage, Elena looks out the window, her expression filled with nervous excitement. Leonhardt offers a simple affirmative reply, a small smile playing on his lips as he watches. Relaxing against the seat, the blonde prince watches his wife with a look of calm affection. Elena turns her gaze toward her husband, her mind clearly racing with a flurry of thoughts. The couple shares a quiet moment in the carriage, the atmosphere thick with unspoken romantic tension. Elena's imagination runs wild with romantic scenarios, causing her to let out a panicked internal scream. Blushing furiously, Elena hides behind her paperwork to avoid the prince's intense, focused gaze. Thump. Clinging to her documents, Elena resolves to prioritize her official duties despite her racing heart. Leonhardt gazes with a calm, satisfied expression as he stands beside the white-haired princess. The series title screen introduces the socially anxious Villainess and her doting tyrant prince. Looking out at the sun-drenched seaside town, a soft gasp of wonder escapes Elena's lips. Dressing elegantly for their outing, the royal couple strolls along the stone walkway by the water. As they walk, Elena softly agrees that the view of the sparkling blue ocean is truly beautiful. Gentle music notes float through the air as Leonhardt watches Elena with a look of quiet intensity. Thinking of the first emperor, Elena reminds herself to keep her eyes on the distant light. Leonhardt's expression softens further as he looks at his wife amidst the glowing, warm sunlight. Elena asks if the melody is the first emperor's song, and Leonhardt confirms her guess simply. Elena recounts a legend where the emperor mistook octopus tentacles for reaching hands in the clear sea. A background of blooming roses frames Elena's internal thoughts regarding the nature of that distant light. A slender hand reaches out toward a cluster of delicate pink roses as the scene shifts. Leonhardt leans in close to Elena's ear, causing her to blush deeply amidst a floral background. Elena's face turns bright red as she reacts with wide-eyed shock to her husband's sudden proximity. Leonhardt reminds her they are on their honeymoon and suggests she pay more attention to the view. Overwhelmed and flustered, Elena protests that engaging in such intimate behavior outdoors is a bit much. Leonhardt explains the yearly festival for night-blooming luminous blossoms, piquing Elena's interest in the local tradition. The narration highlights the reputation of Madame Berry's lands for their rich nature and beautiful seaside. Leonhardt notes the annual flower festival is held to pray for peace throughout the entire region. Excitedly, Elena realizes the festival is the perfect opportunity for her to inspect the town and interact. When Leonhardt asks if she wants to see the preparations, Elena eagerly agrees with a joyful smile. Arriving at the quiet town square, Elena's confusion grows as she notices a lack of activity. Elena observes that festival preparations aren't moving as a group of townsfolk react with visible fear. Leonhardt calls out to the locals, but the men jump in terror as a quick thud sounds. Recognition of the royal couple sends waves of shock through the trembling group of townspeople nearby. The men flee in a panic, terrified by the presence of a man they call a tyrant. Elena quickly pursues the departing locals, her foot hitting the pavement with a sharp tap as she calls out. Elena tries to apologize for the scare, but her accidentally intimidating expression sends the men into hysterics. Panicking, one man shoves his friend forward, pleading for help as he tries to make an escape.
The men desperately beg for forgiveness while running away, leaving a bewildered Elena reaching out to them.
Leonhardt dryly notes that Elena's face is scaring them, though she quickly points out he is scary too.
A respectful voice greets the couple, addressing them formally as the Crown Prince and Crown Princess.
A handsome man with wavy brown hair bows deeply, his hand placed gracefully over his chest. The newcomer looks up with a gentle gaze as a shimmering light surrounds his polite introduction. A formal nameplate identifies the refined and polite young man as Rodolphe Alfred.
Elena apologizes to Rodolphe, acknowledging that they were the ones who unexpectedly intruded on the town.
Shifting to the town state, Leonhardt asks Rodolphe why the flower festival preparations have not yet begun.
Rodolphe's expression darkens with concern as he considers the difficult situation currently facing his local community.
Rodolphe admits he personally wants to hold the festival, but confesses they have run into a problem. Before he can explain, a shout interrupts them, and Rodolphe confirms the latest trouble to his friends. Rodolphe rushes to help an elderly woman struggling with heavy groceries as a worried groan sounds. Hurrying away to assist the local woman, Rodolphe promises to explain the situation in detail very soon. Elena notes Rodolphe's apparent popularity among the townspeople, and Leonhardt agrees with a thoughtful, calm gaze. Back at the villa, Elena laments the cancellation of the festival while sharing tea with her husband. Elena grows serious, noting that something must be deeply wrong for a major local tradition to be canceled. Lost in thought, Elena questions her purpose for visiting the territory as an oppressive shadow looms nearby. Remembering her title, Elena resolves to perform her duty as crown princess by helping to solve local problems. Elena envisions a joyful scene where the townspeople celebrate together once the festival's obstacles are finally cleared. Determination flares like fire in Elena's eyes as she vows to prove herself through this official mission. With a sudden loud bang, Elena slams her hands onto the table and shouts for Leonhardt's attention. The silver-haired princess stands with a spark of determination, ready to personally tackle the town's festival problems. Leonhardt's eyes narrow with sudden interest as he observes his wife's intense and unexpected burst of energy. Leonhardt asks why Elena would choose to work when they are supposed to be enjoying their honeymoon. Elena's face flushes a bright red as she stammers while trying to justify her sudden royal inspection. Leonhardt places his hand on the table, declaring that they should resolve these matters quickly and efficiently. The blonde prince leans in close to his wife, his intense proximity leaving the silver-haired princess completely breathless. Elena gazes up in shock as Leonhardt gently tilts her chin upward, capturing her in his piercing gaze. Leonhardt declares that the time they have together belongs exclusively to them and they will enjoy it. The next day, Elena explores the seaside town in a blue dress while her loyal guards follow behind. Elena decides she wants to investigate the festival's cancellation alone to avoid causing her husband any more trouble. She resolves to discover the truth behind the cancellation on her own as part of her official inspection. The princess walks through the town square, her eyes searching for any sign of the local committee head. Elena spots Rodolphe hanging floral decorations and calls out to the brown-haired man to catch his sudden attention. Rodolphe looks up in surprise, formally acknowledging the crown princess as she approaches him in the bustling square. Elena frantically waves her hands, insisting that her presence shouldn't cause such a major stir among the locals. Elena asks if Rodolphe is still preparing for the festival, and he confirms he wants to stay ready. The princess offers her help with a bright smile, expressing a genuine desire to assist with the preparations. Rodolphe is visibly taken aback and blushes at the crown princess's humble and unexpected offer to help him. Rodolphe praises Elena's skill with her hands, noting that the bouquet she arranged for the festival is perfect. Rodolphe admits he is quite clumsy, making the silver-haired princess's expert assistance a massive and welcome relief. The pair sits together at a wooden table in the square, diligently working on vibrant new flower arrangements. Close up on Rodolphe's mouth as he hesitates, preparing to explain the real reason behind the festival's sudden cancellation. A massive, terrifying gorilla appears behind Rodolphe, letting out a deafening roar as the news of its appearance breaks. Elena stares in pure shock and disbelief, struggling to process the absurd and terrifying news of a gorilla. Rodolphe explains that the gorillas have been ravaging local fields and smashing houses, causing a total community disaster. Rodolphe laments that this year's luminous blossoms were supposed to be the best the town had ever seen. Elena looks deeply concerned as Rodolphe mentions he has never even heard of gorillas appearing in this region. The silver-haired princess reflects that the strange mystery of the gorillas makes the problem even more worth solving. Elena asks about the nature of luminous blossoms, and Rodolphe offers to guide her to a specialty shop. The princess enthusiastically agrees to the shop visit, viewing it as a critical part of a royal inspection. The group arrives at a local specialty shop filled with various glass jars, bottles, and mysterious herbal powders. Rodolphe points out the shop's excellent selection, noting that tourists love to visit for its unique local goods. A sudden hand lands on Elena's shoulder, causing her to shriek in surprise as the shop becomes crowded. Elena notices that the shop is filled with many happy couples, creating a lively and romantic atmosphere inside. Rodolphe begins to share an old legend with Elena as they continue browsing the shop's many romantic offerings. The legend tells of a couple blessed with many children, establishing the blossoms as a symbol of love.
Rodolph explains that the luminous blossoms became a popular and lasting symbol of everlasting love for the townspeople. Rodolph leans in incredibly close to Elena's face while whispering, his sudden proximity catching the princess off guard. The brown-haired man offers a warm and gentle smile, a bright energy radiating from him as he helps. Elena thinks about her duty to provide a royal heir while looking at the shop's romantic selection. The princess stares at the item in her hands, her thoughts trailing off into a deep, sheepish blush. Elena wonders if she should purchase the mysterious product, her face still glowing with a shy crimson hue. Leonhardt stands in the street with his aide, wondering where his wife has disappeared to this time. The taupe-haired aide spots Elena in the distance and quickly points her out to the blonde prince. Leonhardt watches from afar as Elena walks happily beside Rodolph, who is carrying a small brown paper bag. The aide questions if Leonhardt is truly comfortable leaving his wife alone with another man during their shopping. Leonhardt smirks with a dark and competitive amusement, deciding it would be entertaining to follow them instead. The aide calls out to the prince in surprise as Leonhardt begins to tail the pair through town. Leonhardt and his aide watch through a window, seeing Elena and Rodolph sharing a friendly laughing moment together. Elena and Rodolph sit at a terrace table overlooking the sea, enjoying a quiet moment of tea together. Leonhardt and his taupe-haired aide look at a newspaper with a surprised exclamation of amazement. The taupe-haired aide notes the royal's good mood, prompting the blonde prince to grab his collar. A dark background is dominated by a menacing red question asking if someone has a death wish. Leonhardt glares furiously at his terrified aide, who questions why the prince is so angry. A chibi representation of Elena is accompanied by a thought observing that the crown princess looks happy. A silver full moon shines brightly over the grand villa's facade during a peaceful night. A match is used to light the flame of a single pink candle resting on a saucer. Elena excitedly explains to herself that she purchased a special candle to set a romantic mood. The princess recalls Rodolph sharing local romantic legends about the town's special night-blooming blossoms. Reflecting on their arrival, Elena laments simply passing out from exhaustion on their first night together. A thought bubble emphasizes the crown princess's vital and important duty to provide a royal heir. Elena clenches her fists with a firm resolve to make the evening's events a total success. Elena stands determinedly as Leonhardt sits nearby in a robe while focused on his book. Leonhardt looks up with a serene expression while closing the small book in his hand. Elena blushes while thinking she is too nervous to look at Leonhardt's confused face. A small chibi Elena tells herself that she should begin the evening with simple conversation. Leonhardt waits patiently as he listens to whatever information Elena is preparing to share with him. A chibi Elena explains that the festival was canceled because a gorilla is coming into the town. Leonhardt stands up from the sofa and acknowledges his understanding of the town's complicated problem. Leonhardt orders Elena to sleep while he arranges a subjugation squad, leaving her bewildered and saying, "Huh?" Elena lunges forward to stop her husband from leaving, calling out for him to wait. Elena suddenly pins Leonhardt down onto the bed, catching the blonde prince completely off guard. The silver-haired princess looks down with a blushing and intense expression of total determination. Leonhardt lies pinned on the bed, looking up in shock at his wife's sudden boldness. Elena's hands press firmly against Leonhardt's chest as she holds him down on the sheets. Leonhardt stares up at his wife with wide eyes while sweating from the sudden tension. Hovering over her husband, Elena intensely declares that she will not let him sleep tonight. The princess gazes down at Leonhardt with a heavy and serious look in her green eyes. Elena looms over the stunned Leonhardt as they lie together on the large bed. Leonhardt blushes and lets out a confused "huh" as he wonders what has gotten into his wife. Elena recalls the romantic advice in the shop visit while holding her purchase in the candle. A close-up shows a hand gripping a robe tightly during the intense confrontation on the bed. Leonhardt suddenly throws a large blanket over Elena with a swift and forceful motion. Elena is rolled tightly into the blanket and lets out a surprised "what?" as he pulls it. Leonhardt hugs the blanket at Elena and tells her to sleep before tomorrow's early departure. Leonhardt quickly falls asleep while leaning against the bundled-up Elena, leaving her completely stunned. Elena cries in despair, fearing she has failed her most important duty as a royal wife. Elena addresses the townspeople, speaking of her commitment to ensuring their peaceful lives. The silver-haired princess continues her speech, promising to ensure a safe and successful flower festival. Elena loudly announces to the crowd that they are starting a guerrilla subjugation mission. Elena presents her husband to the townsfolk, claiming his strength is worth 100 men. The princess declares her intention to join the mission and resolve the town's troubles personally. Leonhardt leans in close to the flustered Elena as she tries to maintain her professional composure. Elena thinks about how awkward it feels to look at Leonhardt's face after the previous night. Elena slaps her cheeks to refocus on the hunt and put her deep embarrassment aside. Rodolph stands amidst white flowers with his hand over his heart, looking like a hero. Elena thanks Rodolph for his reassurance while he tells her to stay close and follow. Leonhardt watches from the side as the townspeople celebrate Rodolph's help and leadership. The morning sun shines brightly over the craggy peaks of a massive green mountain range. Leonhardt leads the group into the mountains while warning them not to fall behind. Elena and Leonhardt lead a small scouting party through a lush, sun-dappled forest clearing. Leonhardt notes that the path has vanished, leaving the group uncertain of their next move. Checking his compass, the blonde prince attempts to navigate the group toward a nearby cave. The brown-haired scout points toward an alternate route, suggesting they take the path to the right.
He explains that while the route involves a cliff, it is the fastest way forward.
Elena clenches her fists with optimism, visibly impressed by the scout's confident and helpful suggestion. Elena remains hopeful that a smooth mission will successfully save the upcoming Kingdom's Flower Festival.
But Princess and the scout agree to push forward, while Leonhardt watches them with growing skepticism.
Leonhardt stands alone, internally questioning why the group is following the scout instead of him.
The prince's expression sours as he reminds himself that he is actually the mission's commander.
Elena and the scout share a friendly, laughing moment that leaves Leonhardt feeling completely sidelined.
A bold proclamation signals the activation of the blonde prince's dormant and possessive overbearing side. Leonhardt smirks with a dark, competitive intensity, finding the scout's rapport with Elena rather interesting. Light filters through the forest canopy, marking a brief moment of calm before the tension escalates. Elena shrieks as a snake appears, but Leonhardt calmly dismisses the threat as something trivial. A sudden, sharp rustle sounds as the scout warns Leonhardt to wait before touching the snake. The scout safely handles the reptile while Elena thanks him profusely, further irritating the watching prince. Leonhardt grips his sword hilt, his face clouding with visible annoyance at being upstaged again. Reaching out near a rocky ledge, Leonhardt attempts to finally offer his assistance to the princess.
Elena turns toward him, looking startled by his sudden, lingering reach and the intensity of his gaze. Elena wonders if her previous rejection of the prince was nothing more than a misunderstanding.
Distracted by her own conflicting thoughts, Elena struggles to decide how to act around him.
A firm, unexpected hand lands on Elena's shoulder, pulling her focus back to the immediate path.
The brown-haired scout takes Elena's hand to guide her, leaving the princess looking utterly bewildered.
A heavy thud echoes as Leonhardt's fist crushes a rock, his jealousy reaching its breaking point. The party stops to rest, with Elena and the scout sharing a log in the clearing.
Leonhardt admits to himself that he has been feeling irrationally irritated since the previous evening. He realizes his heart wavers with envy every single time Elena smiles at the other man. Clutching his cloak, Leonhardt experiences a sharp, agonizing pang of possessiveness he cannot easily ignore. The prince decides he wants her attention focused entirely and exclusively on him and him alone. The surrounding bushes begin to shake violently as a sudden ominous rustling sound fills the air. A monstrous gorilla with glowing red eyes bursts out, letting out a deafening, terrifying roar. The beast's raw power creates a shockwave, scattering leaves as it prepares to charge the group. Caught off guard, Elena and the scout scream in unison as the massive monster looms over. Panicking, the scout yells for Elena to retreat while the beast prepares a violent, crushing strike. Leonhardt's hand flies to his sword hilt, his cold resolve hardening as he prepares to intervene. A thunderous roar shakes the forest as the monster lunges forward with its massive, powerful claws. Elena whisses and shuts her eyes, bracing herself for the impact of the beast's impending attack. A swift metallic ring sounds as Leonhardt leaps forward, drawing his sword in a lethal arc. With a single devastating blow, the prince cleaves through the monster, ending the threat instantly. Leonhardt lands gracefully, holding the trembling princess protectively against his chest as the beast falls. Elena looks up in shock while the scout calls out, desperately checking if she was harmed.
Standing tall, Leonhardt looms over Elena, his massive cloak shielding her from the entire outside world.
Leonhardt pulls Elena into a firm embrace, his possessive gaze finally locking onto her startled face. Surrounded by blooming roses, Elena blushes a deep crimson as she feels the prince's intense proximity. Leonhardt declares with absolute authority that the only person she is allowed to look at is him.